STE3, take 2. Alright, so first thing, if you could just state your name, your rank or rate when you left the service and the branch you served and how many years you served.
My name is Joe Washington. My rank was E4 when I left the Marine Corps. I had 2 years of active duty and 4 years of reserve. I went in May of '68, and my termination was in May of '74.
All right. Were you drafted?
No, I volunteered, but there's a story behind that.
Can we hear the story?
Well, I knew the war in Vietnam was going on, and so a friend of mine was in the Air Force. He said, "You don't really want to go to Vietnam." He said, "Come and join the Air Force," which he was already in. And so I went down to Petersburg and took the test to join the Air Force. Well, lo and behold, I passed the test. But there's a waiting list to get into the Air Force during that time frame, because obviously many people were trying to get into the Air Force rather than into the Army or the Marines. And while I was waiting to join the Air Force, I got a letter from the government saying that I had been drafted. And so my mother, who lived in Baltimore at the time, suggested if I was going to Vietnam, I should go with the best fighting branch of service that was out there, and that was the Marine Corps. So I went and joined the Marine Corps.
Right. So let's see. How old were you? How old were you when that was all going on?
I was 18 when I got the letter. I was 19 when I went in the Marine Corps.
So how old were you when you graduated high school?
Well, I was 17 when I graduated from high school.
Okay. Let's see. What were your thoughts on the Vietnamese people while you were there? And then, just so you know, that question is going to lead to, have your thoughts changed on them as well? So if you could start with thoughts on the Vietnamese people while you were there, or on the conflict itself, either one.
Well, my thoughts on the Vietnamese people while I was there, not the combatants we fought, just the people itself. I thought most of them were poor, third world nation country. Most of them that didn't live in the city lived in villages outside the countryside, and they were, say the least, very poor farmers and peddlers.
Was it hard to distinguish between just the people who lived there and then the enemy combatants?
Absolutely. You never knew who the combatants were or who the friendlies were. We could go into a village and we meet all kinds of people there, and they seemed very, very nice. And that night when we sat in our position, we were attacked, and we didn't know whether or not they were the same people that we had just talked to that day going to that village. So there was hardly any distinction between the Viet Cong and your regular Vietnamese people, because one village may be a friendly village and the next village may be hostile, but you wouldn't know that.
Were there any specific people that you met that stood out to you, and did they speak English? Did they not speak English?
Most of them spoke some kind of broken English, especially the young kids over there. The Arvins, which is the South Vietnamese army, I thought they were, for their size and stature, they were very small individuals. I guess if you found one that was 5'8", that was pretty tall, but most of them stood about 5'5", 5'6", and they could carry a lot of weight. If you compare there, like a ant would carry twice or 7 times his size and weight. They were very strong individuals, I thought. And I saw one Arvin in particular carrying a .50 caliber machine gun. I mean, that's a heavy weapon, and plus he was carrying belts of ammunition. So I say these guys are pretty strong guys.
Wow.
And none of them were fat. They were very small in stature. That stood out.
I don't think it was you. I know Commander Greenwell told me someone returned to Vietnam. Was Wasn't you, Mr. Eccles, was it?
What was that?
Return to Vietnam?
Did I return to Vietnam?
Yes, sir. Okay.
I had an opportunity to, but I told him that I was there the first time it was free and didn't want to be there. I sure wasn't gonna pay to go back.
I can understand that. Were you ever wounded?
Yes, I was wounded in the face and neck. We set in, this is around April or May of '69. We set in perimeter at night and with our platoon, and they probed the lines that night. In other words, they were seeing if they could get in. They would fire RPGs, mortars, and try to find our weakest area. I was in the foxhole with a guy named Lance Corporal Sullivan out of Brooklyn, New York, and I was on duty. We had an hour on and an hour off, and on my hour, I saw a flash to my right, and all of a sudden it felt like a huge individual had smacked me upside the face, and I put my hand up there, and I could feel my blood, and I could smell it. I never forget that smell. And I said, "Sully, I'm hit." And he came out of his foxhole with his M16 on fully automatic, and he just sprayed the area in front of us. And that was a harrowing night because we were probed that whole night, and the corpsman came around and patched me up and said, the lieutenant said if anybody could still pull a trigger, they would not be leaving that night. You had to spend the night there. So I was one of the walking wounded that spent the night. I didn't get medevac out until the next morning.
How long was your recovery after that?
It was a short period of recovery. I think I spent about a couple of days at the field hospital, and they gave me about a week or so off in the rear. And then when my outfit came back in, I joined it back up with me. The biggest thing they did, it was some shrapnel in my face and neck. A piece just missed my eye here, and they dug that out. As a piece still embedded in my neck now that they said not to remove it because it was too close to a nerve to move. So that's been embedded since I was wounded that night.
Like the explosion was like an artillery shell or a grenade?
Well, as I look at the flash, I would think it was a mortar round because I don't think it was an artillery shell. I think it was a mortar round because it didn't. We had foxholes maybe 20 yards apart, and for artillery rounds, it would have probably did more damage. So I think it was a mortar round from the distance it was.
So I know you showed me, but I'm going to ask it as if did you receive any commendations or medals?
Well, I say the Navy Commendation Medal with Combat V, and then V is for valor. And that's one commendation I'm very proud of. And as you read it, you seem to be impressed with that. And the Purple Heart, and there were numerous other commendations I've gotten. President Unit Citation. I can't name them all right now.
I understand if you don't want to relive it, but you describe the circumstances that you were awarded the Navy Commendation Medal for.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was on Operation Oklahoma Hills. I was in 6 major combat operations while I was over there, and this particular one was awarded in Oklahoma Hills, where it was triple canopy. It was a very thick mountainous area, and we were shadowed the whole time, that from the time we got there till probably the time that we left. And we were always, every day we sent out patrols. It was 3 squads. I was 2nd Platoon squad leader, and we would go out, different squads would go out each day. And on this particular day is when I took my squad out that I encountered some NVA. These were not Viet Cong, understand. These were uniform NVA, the best that they had to throw at us. And so we were up there fighting those in those mountains up there. And we came upon them, and we enveloped them and opened fire on them and killed 2 of them. And some of them had papers on there. And also on that operation, we found NVA hospital up there that had all kind of medicine there, and some of the medicine was from San Francisco, California, which did not sit well with any of our Marine troops there, because when we saw that they had somehow got their hands on medicine from California, from the United States, it was really, really devastating to us.
I can imagine. What was your experience returning home after?
Well, returning home, some people flew back. My experience coming back from Vietnam, I came back on a troop transport ship called the USS Bear, and it took us 23 days to cross the Pacific from Vietnam to San Diego, California, and that gave us time to settle down, get the jitters out, and so forth. And I got to Camp Pendleton, and then I caught a flight from there after about 2 weeks back to Virginia, and I just kind of melted in the population, I guess, went to work, and never really thought about my experiences in Vietnam. Actually, I tried to forget about them, and you go through this what we call self-medicate. I don't know if you all know that terminology or not, and try to ease the pain or forget about it, and over the years you just kind of shoved it on the back shelf. There were no incidents where people really came at me for my experience in Vietnam, because I wouldn't really tell anybody that I had been to Vietnam. I just kind of went to work for a factory, a company called West Vaco, and I stayed there for over 33 years, and it's kind of melted in with the civilian population there.
And so, what were the years you said you were in Vietnam again?
68 and 69. I went over in October of 68 and came back in November of 69.
How much were you exposed to public opinion back in the States on the war while you were in Vietnam?
None.
None?
None. The only thing the only news that we knew about in 69, they had a moon landing, and that came down to us. But as far as the protests going on, that was never heard of. Or even the letters I got from home, there was nothing in there about protesting about the Vietnam War.
Had the protests started before you left, or was it?
Somewhat, but not being politically motivated at that time. You have to understand, I was 18, 19 years old, and what the politicians was doing in D.C. wasn't interested in. And even when I got back, I started to get into it then, and I realized that there was a lot of protests going on. But for me, negative vibes, I never really experienced the spitting upon or being called a baby kid. I never experienced that. I guess basically because when I came back, I went to work right away in 1970, and I just didn't see that.
Was it difficult to go back to work, or?
Yes, it was. It was very, very difficult leaving a combat area, being in the bush for 30, 60 days at a time, and coming back and seeing how regular people or civilians carried on with their lives. I had a hard time adjusting to people not doing what they say they're going to do. I had a hard time dealing with weak individuals, and especially I had a hard time with hearing babies crying, because on the battlefield when someone was hit badly or something, they may holler out or howl, and when I heard a baby crying, it reminded me of someone being shot on the battlefield. It was very, very difficult for the first 10 or 15 years adjusting.
Totally changing gears, but what was the landscape like there? Was it like anything you'd seen before, or totally different?
Well, I had been to the mountains of West Virginia. I guess you would say the mountains of West Virginia kind of favor that, and the coastline looks like beaches that you have at Virginia Beach or Myrtle Beach. In actuality, it was a beautiful country. It was absolutely beautiful. If you like picturesque sunsets, the only time that it wasn't nice was monsoon season, when it rained pretty much every day, and it was a gray, wet, dreary area. But in the summertime, it was a very beautiful country.
XO, do you have any questions?
Back to what we were talking about or before with like the protests and stuff like that. What was your reaction when you got back and you saw that all that stuff was going on?
I saw what was going on, but I didn't get involved in that.
You just kind of pushed it to the side and just kind of went on with your life.
But that's exactly right. I didn't get involved, and like I said earlier, I didn't mention that I was a Vietnam veteran. Years later, people said, "Oh, I didn't know you was a veteran." I just kind of kept that to myself and went about my daily routine as best I could at that time.
Mr. Eccles, do you think we missed anything? I know you know Mr. Washington pretty well.
No, just to reiterate on what he just said, for about 20 years, myself and just about everybody I know that was in Vietnam kind of put everything behind them. I mean, we didn't put any awards up on the wall or wear anything that had Marine Corps on it or anything. All that went in the attic, and it was like 20 years before society started coming around to liking vets. I mean, right now I have people thanking me for my service. 20 years ago, nobody was thanking me for my service.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was just, it's different times. And, I don't know why they were putting it on us. We just went over there and did our duty. I mean, if they didn't like the war, that's fine, but don't put it on the guys that were there.
Yeah, we did what we were called upon to do, and we did it well. Mr. Eccles and I served with 3rd Battalion, 26th Marine, which was at Quai San, Cantienne. We got President Unit citation, and I don't have them with me, but he probably have letters at home where our commander said how outstanding job we did. And we were the only unit that was attached to 3rd Marine Division and 1st Marine Division, although we were 5th Marine Division. We are the only outfit that can have that distinction of being fought with 2 divisions.
We got in total, during the time period I was there, 3 presidential unit citations. So it was.
And that's unheard of with any Marine Corps unit.
Well, what do you think made your unit, what motivated them to be so much better than the rest?
Well, I'll let Mr. Eccles answer that one.
What was the question?
I asked why you think your unit performed so much better than.
It's not the fact that it's doing so much better, they just got thrown into the fire. I mean, it's just a matter of being unlucky. I mean,
And what do you mean by unlucky?
I'm going to ask you that again when you're in front of the camera, by the way, so be expecting that.
Well, as I said, we were attached to 3rd Marine Division, and then somewhere around June of
May of 1968.
May of '68, we were detached from 3rd and attached to 1st Marine Division.
Because I was in the unit at the time when we moved from up north down to
Da Nang area.
Da Nang area.
It's where 1st Marine was operating at. And because our original unit was the 5th Marine Division, which you took a picture of, we were thrown around. We were like the Minutemen of the Revolutionary War, wherever we were needed. As I showed you earlier, we was on the USS Tripoli, and wherever we were needed, we were thrust into that hot spot. And so that is why we have all those accommodations that we have.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah. XO, any more?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Washington.
It's my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Pleasure to hear
Appreciate it.
what you had to say, and look forward to